It is worth summarizing the salient features of the debate about the origins of the Quranic form of Jesus' name. It is not certain that Jesus' original name was Yeshua. Josephus,
yes.
The evidence he provided for the name.
Yes.
Let's read from this encyclopedia.
Yes.
Okay. So this is probably what you read, right? Rather than the encyclopedia article. So
okay.
There was a Wikipedia article. Is this what you're reading from?
Nope.
Because
I actually have the Brill Encyclopedia.
Yeah, so do I. So
okay.
when you read the Brill Encyclopedia, what did it actually say? So let me read it to you. Okay. From the encyclopedia itself.
Okay.
Here. Josephus, this is point number 3.
Yes.
Josephus used the Greek name Jesus to denote 3 people mentioned in the Bible whose Hebrew names were not Yeshua.
Yes.
So now we see already last time,
yes,
you have been very selective and very misrepresenting Josephus.
Okay.
So Josephus used Jesus to refer to other people whose name was not Yeshua.
Yes.
Very clearly this is what he's saying.
Okay.
They're not even, he says, let me continue reading the text. Josephus used the Greek name Jesus to denote 3 people mentioned in the Bible whose Hebrew names were not Yeshua, Yahushua, or Yahushua.
Okay.
They were Saul's son, Ishvi, anglicized as Ishvi in the RSV of 1 Samuel 14:49. The Levite Abishua, mentioned in 1 Chronicles 6:4, etc. And Ishwa, the son of Asher, anglicized as Ishva in the RSV of Genesis 46:17. So the Josephus that you use to provide evidence for your support for your argument is actually saying this is not an evidence at all, because Josephus used the name Jesus referring to other people who were called what? Abishua, Ishvi, Ishwa. When I pronounce this name, Jesus, I want to know what the actual name was.
Yes.
So now he says these names are actually from Ishwi.
Yeah.
Does it sound like Yeshua?
It doesn't need to.
Abishua? Does it sound like Yeshua?
Doesn't need to.
Ishwa? Does it sound like Yeshua? It doesn't. This is what Brill Encyclopedia itself says. Josephus used the name Jesus referring to other people who were not Yeshua, Yahushua, or Yahushua.
Yes.
So Josephus' evidence goes against you. In fact, Josephus consolidates my point where it says, when we have this Greek name, Jesus, is it a translation from Ishvi? Is it a translation from Ishvi or Ishvi or Abishua or Ishwa or Ishva or Yeshua? So can you be certain?
Yes.
Now if we now continue the conclusion of Brill Encyclopedia, what do they say? By way of conclusion. I'm sure you've read it, right? But you hid the information last time. Selective quotation. By way of conclusion, it is worth summarizing the salient features of the debate about the origins of the Quranic form of Jesus' name. It is not certain that Jesus' original name was Yeshua.
Okay.
You want to have a look at it?
I know.
You know.
Okay.
And yet, you somehow bring Brill Encyclopedia as an evidence, which goes against you. Now, this is my point. So, the evidence that you provided is an evidence against you.
Okay.
You asked me, bring me some of the scholars who supports my view. Because what was my view? I am not certain, which is totally in line with Brill Encyclopedia says. So now you have a big problem. Is Jesus a translation of Ishvi, Ashvi, Abishua, Ishwa, Yahushua, right?
All right.
You have no certainty, just like what I claim. You have no way of determining what it is.
First of all, you are correct in that Jesus can be used for other names. Firstly, when we go to the scripture, it tells you the meaning behind the name, that God will save. This is the same, so it comes from Yeho saves. So the Bible itself gives you the meaning of the name. That's why when you look at the Greek, you know it's not the other names, because every name has a different meaning. What you're saying, does this name sound like that name? That's what we call homophones, and you're making a mistake. For example, if I say night with a K and night with an N, they sound similar, but they have different meanings. Now, if I go and write that in an English test and I say at night time with a K, I will fail my exam. So your point that it should sound similar is actually not a point itself. It just has to translate to the same. So that's why when I originally told you that in the Greek they did not have the letter shin or the letter Y, so they had to use an iota instead. So now going back to your point of Josephus, just for the cameras, I'll show you as well. That is the rendition in Aramaic, this word here. That's the Aramaic, that word right there. So the funny thing is, Josephus was actually translated into Syriac and Arabic. So now, if you can see here, you can see early church fathers. This is actually Josephus's quote in Syriac. So I'm just showing you again. That is the word that I've highlighted. So we've had it.
Of what to what?
This is in Syriac, which is old format.
Translation of what?
Of the name that
this particular text is.
Yeah, this is a testimony of Flavinium, which is Josephus. It was translated.
When is this translation from? Which century?
This is from, they believe it's as early as the 5th century. So now Mansour will say, well, how did we know? It's very unlikely that they would have translated it into another language without actually understanding what the translation was. We also have the Arabic text, which again I've highlighted the word, which is
when?
This was in the 10th century.
10th century.
Yes.
So you have 1,000 years later, right?
That's fine. Just so you can see the evidence, because this is the same text of Josephus. That's the word Yeshua. Now,
so a translation from 500 years later and a translation 1,000 years later is an evidence.
Now we have multiple sources confirming the same thing pretty much. Maybe you might have one or two disagreements, as Mansour might say. Now I want you to look at this person, because in biblical literature you obviously have the Greek and you have the Peshitta. The Peshitta is in Syriac, which is Middle Aramaic, so it's very close to what Jesus would have spoken. It's season. So actually, before I spoke to Mansour, I want everyone just to see this. His name is Sebastian Brock. He's a scholar at Oxford University. Anyone can go and Google his name. It says Sebastian Paul Brock, FBA, is generally acknowledged as the foremost academic in the field of Syriac today. I actually emailed him about this. Here's my email. You can see the email too. And I will read what he says, because I asked him where did the name come from. He said, the Syriac forms of the name have nothing directly to do with the Greek, Jesus, but will have come from early Syriac-speaking Christians by the way of Jewish Aramaic, so presumably reached the Old Syriac and Peshitta Gospels by oral tradition. The name will have been very familiar long before anyone thought of translating the Greek Gospels into Syriac. Since vocalization signs were not introduced at all about the 7th or 8th century, there is no way of knowing about how the consonant Y-S-H-W, which is the consonants that I've been telling you about, were pronounced by early Syriac-speaking Christians. But at the time of the vocalization, the Eastern and Western Syriac traditions of pronunciation had diverged. So one had Isho and the other had Yeshua. This is one of the foremost scholars on Syriac language. If Mansour wants to bring me a counter scholar who can then disprove and say what his alternate name would have been, I will be happy to discuss that evidence. But we have confirmation from an Oxford scholar, one of the most leading scholars. He said the name did not come from the Greek because the Peshitta tries to claim source primacy. They say they got it from Jesus directly. But scholars have noticed that certain phrases in the Peshitta that would have only come from the from the Greek. So most scholars will agree that the Peshitta came from the Greek. But he's confirmed the name didn't even come from the Greek. It's come through oral tradition. So you can, yes.
Instead of giving me evidence, what you've given me again, look, a work that has been translated 500 years later, when already Christianity have accepted by their traditions that name is this Yeshua. Or 1,000 years later in an Arabic translation, this name is Yeshua. These are already what we call popular belief within the people who are translating. Your belief which is based on your evidence, but your evidence base is what? All guesswork and assumptions. So I am consistently saying the scholars are with me. You cannot be certain because there's no certainty about what this original name is, as clearly Encyclopedia of the Qur'an by the Brill publishers are clearly saying. And they say possibility exists that it could be Isa or so on and so forth. So the point is, I think it's established beyond a shadow of doubt by using the evidence that you tried to support, which goes against you, that yes, the name about Isa alayhi salam is not Jesus, Latinized, because that's not what his mom called him. It's not even Jesus, because it's a Greek translation. What was the name given by his mom? You don't know.
Mansour has made many fallacies in his argumentation.
2-3 minutes.
The first
You
of
take the last word.
all, he said that if there's no manuscripts, therefore it's unreliable. But when we go to Islamic literature, especially the hadiths, we cannot find anything written. But they will use an argumentation of chains of narration. But then, by Mansour's own standard, we should reject this and only accept manuscripts, the earliest manuscripts. Funny, even I'm going to go on a tangent, the earliest manuscripts of Muhammad do not even say that he performed any miracles. They describe him as a normal man. It's only the later traditions that then associate miraculous wonders with him. So by Mansour's argumentation, we should reject all later manuscripts from hadith that say he did miraculous things and only accept the earliest stuff like Ibn Ishaq. Now, going on to his point about the name Yisu, we have the Septuagint, which was translated from Jews to Jews. The Jewish scholars translated it into Greek because Greek was the lingua franca. Mansour's argumentation, none of the people at the time knew what the name translated as. They're all ignorant. We have all the over 50 Gnostic Gospels. They're all ignorant according to Mansour, who were close to the time. We have the Josephus translated into other languages. From their ignorance as well, they've mistranslated his name. He's now rejecting one of the foremost scholars of Syriac language and the Peshitta. These people do not do PhDs in nothing. They go and do their research. They don't make an opinion. That's what the false assertion Mansour's making. This is the foremost scholar who has written numerous papers on the Peshitta. He knows about the traditions. If Mansour wants to bring me an alternative name for Yeshua, we will discuss it, because the original point I said to him is, where did the name Isa come from? So if he can provide me an alternative name from the Greek, from the Hebrew, which translates into the Arabic, then we can discuss it. But at the moment, he's just given me straw mans and red herrings.
Okay,
so we have now seen
we've heard
that I've given all my evidence. We have the Talmud, we have the Bible, we have all the Gnostic Gospels, we have most of the early church fathers, we have the Peshitta, we have oral tradition.
What you've asked for, I provided, which
Okay.
refutes you completely. There's no point any further discussion about going back again, oh, Talmud and this and this. So, nice talking to you, Paperboy.
Okay.
Maybe one day you'll be known with your real name.
As we can see, he was unable to provide me an alternative name.
Why
He
are
can
you
only.
going back again?
This is what we call. What he's doing is called an attack, a fallacy of ignorance. Because
As you can see,
a fallacy
black
of
and white.
ignorance is, for example, if I say the moon is made of cheese in the center, no one can disprove it. It doesn't mean my point is right. This is why we have a fallacy called the argument from ignorance, because this is what Mansour is making, that he does not know, he cannot provide any evidence to provide an alternative name for Isa. I've provided scholarship, true scholarship, one of the foremost scholars of the Peshitta who's confirmed the tradition of the name. But yet, when it comes to hadith, they can reject manuscripts and say we can rely on it on oral tradition. But it seems like everyone else's oral tradition is invalid unless it suits his argument. So again, I will ask any Muslim to show me where did the name Isa come from, or the Hebrew equivalent. Mansour, in his confidence, said that he can wrap this subject over in 15 minutes, but yeah, I've conclusively made my point and destroyed his argumentation that it could have been anything other than Yeshua.
I just want to ask again, what is the goal at the end of this?
Etymologically, you can translate it back
Underlying
into Hebrew.
this is the Quran gets it wrong. Right?
Yes.
That is the assumption. He says yes. But we know that your evidence is based on zilch.